Hey guys, tonight we are diving head first into one of history's most famously stoic and, let's be honest, slightly terrifying cultures, the Spartans. But we're not going to be marching in a phalanx or polishing bronze shields. No, we're going to do something far more fundamental, something that defined their entire existence from the cradle to the grave. We're going to talk about their food. And I'll give you a little spoiler. It was legendarily awful. You might think twice about wanting to be Leonidas after this, because frankly you might not have survived the first day. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It helps the channel find other history lovers who enjoy these quiet nighttime journeys. And while you're at it, let me know in the comments what city you're in and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see where everyone is tuning in from. Dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first thing you experience isn't a warm blanket or a loving embrace. It's the cold, crisp air of the Laconian Valley biting at your brand new skin. You've just arrived in this world in Sparta, sometime around the 5th century BC. But there's no time for quiet cooing or family cuddles. Your life, from this very first moment, belongs to the state. Before you are even properly named, you are taken from your mother. You're swaddled in a rough spun cloth and carried not to a nursery, but to a place of judgment. Imagine a stone chamber, cool and echoing, where the Syssitia, the council of elders, convenes. These are not kindly grandfathers. These are men with faces like weathered rock, their eyes assessing clinical. They are the quality control inspectors for the Spartan state. They take you, a tiny, fragile thing, and they examine you. They check your limbs, your overall form. Is this infant fit? Is it free of any blemish or weakness that might hinder its future as a warrior or the mother of warriors? It's a stark, unsentimental process. You are not a baby, you are a future asset, a potential shield in the wall of Spartan defense. If you pass this initial, purely physical inspection, you might think the worst is over, but you'd be wrong. There's another test, a much stranger one. A servant brings forth a shallow basin. It's not filled with warm water, but with unmixed wine. The smell hits you first sharp, acidic, and deeply unfamiliar. This, according to the writer Plutarch, who chronicled many Spartan traditions, is your first true trial. You are plunged into the wine. The legend, or perhaps the reality, was that this bath of pure wine served a specific, brutal purpose. It was believed that a weak or sickly infant, one prone to seizures or other ailments, would react violently to the undiluted alcohol. They would convulse, their frail bodies unable to withstand the shock, and perish. But a strong, healthy baby, a true Spartan, you would emerge from the wine bath tense and hardened, almost, as the stories go, as if you were tempered like a tiny steel blade. Now, did this actually happen in this exact, dramatic way? Well, this is one of those things historians are still debating. Some argue that Plutarch, writing centuries after Sparta's peak, might have been exaggerating to embellish the legend of Spartan toughness. It's possible the practice was more symbolic, perhaps just a wiping down with a wine-soaked cloth rather than a full, terrifying immersion. Others maintain that in a society so obsessed with physical perfection and endurance, such a harsh test is entirely plausible. It was the ultimate pass-fail exam, administered before you could even hold your own head up. For now, you don't care about historical debates. You only know the shock of the cold liquid, the sting of it. But you endure. You are pulled from the basin, your skin tingling, unflushed, reeking of sour grapes. You've passed. You are deemed worthy. You are wrapped once more and returned to your mother. But something has fundamentally changed. You carry with you the faint, sharp scent of wine, a constant reminder of your first lesson in this life. You are here to be strong. You are here to endure, and softness is a luxury you will never be afforded. Your survival is conditional, and you've just cleared the first, and perhaps one of the strangest hurdles. The state has signed off on you. Your journey as a Spartan has officially begun. You spend the next few years in your mother's care, but it's a far cry from a modern, coddled childhood. There are no elaborate toys, no brightly colored distractions. Your mother is a Spartan woman, and her primary duty to the state is to raise you not with affection, but with a specific kind of neglect designed to forge resilience. You are not swaddled tightly to keep you still and quiet. Instead, you're left to move freely, to learn the limits of your own small body. The goal is to teach you from infancy to be unafraid of the dark, to be content with solitude, and to never be fussy about your food. This last point is crucial. The food you eat in these early years is plain, simple, and never abundant. It's a preview of what's to come. You get barley mash, maybe a bit of goat's milk cheese, some figs if they are in season. There are no sweet treats, no special snacks to appease a whining child. You eat what is given, and you learn to be grateful for it. Your taste buds are being conditioned, not for pleasure, but for function. Food is fuel, nothing more. Your mother, in her own stern way, is preparing you for the shock of what comes next. And then the day arrives. You turn 7. In other Greek city-states, this is an age for starting formal education, for learning poetry and philosophy. In Sparta, it is the age of separation. It's the day you are taken from your home, from your mother, your sisters, and any semblance of family life. You are to enter the Agoge, the infamous Spartan state-sponsored training regimen that will be your home, your school, and your crucible for the next 13 years. You walk with your father, leaving the familiar stone courtyard of your house. He doesn't offer many words of comfort. His grip on your shoulder is firm, a gesture of transfer, not tenderness. You arrive at a sprawling complex of austere-looking buildings. It's less a school and more a barracks. Here you are handed over to the paid onomos, the boy herder, a magistrate in charge of the Agoge. This man is chosen from the most respected citizens, and his job is to oversee your transformation from a boy into a Spartan warrior. He does not smile. Your world shrinks to the size of your new herd. Your agely you are one of a group of boys your own age, all of you looking just as lost and small as you feel. Your long hair, a mark of childhood, is shorn off. Your comfortable tunic is replaced with a single, rough garment, the chiton which you are expected to wear year-round, regardless of the biting winter cold or the searing summer heat. You're also forbidden from wearing sandals. The logic going barefoot will harden your feet, making them tough and calloused, better for running across the rocky terrain of Laconia. It's a practical lesson in enduring discomfort, and it starts from the ground up. The true shock, however, is the food, or rather, the lack of it. In your mother's house, the food was simple, but it was sufficient. Here, in the Agoge, the rations are deliberately, punishingly scarce. At the communal dining table, you are given a small portion of that same bland barley porridge, maybe a thin slice of bread, and a cup of water. It's just enough to keep you alive, but never enough to make you feel full. Hunger becomes a constant companion, a dull ache in your belly that never truly goes away. This isn't a budgetary issue. Sparta is not a cruel state. This is a core part of the curriculum. The elders, the state, want you to be hungry. They believe that an underfed boy will grow up to be taller and leaner, as his body isn't weighed down by excessive food. Whether this particular bit of Spartan science holds up is, of course, a matter of great debate. Modern nutritionists would likely have a field day with this theory, but the Spartans were convinced. A lean, weary frame was considered the ideal for a warrior, and intentional malnourishment was the tool to achieve it. But there's a deeper, more psychological reason for the constant hunger. It's meant to create a state of perpetual desire, a gnawing need that will drive you to do what comes next. The state doesn't just want to teach you to endure hunger, it wants to teach you how to solve it. Your instructors will tell you with a glint in their eyes that if you want more to eat, you will have to find it yourself. and they don't mean by asking nicely. Your formal education in stealth, resourcefulness, and theft is about to begin. The gnawing in your stomach is the primary motivation for your next and most dangerous lesson. The hunger is a physical presence now. It's a hollow feeling that wakes you up in the pre-dawn chill and nagging distraction during the grueling hours of wrestling, running, and mock battles that fill your days. The meager rations served in the mess hall feel more like a taunt than a meal. You watch the older boys, the ones with a few more years in the Agoge, and you notice they carry themselves with a different air. They seem less desperate, their eyes sharper, more alert. You soon learn why. They have mastered the art of survival, the art of KLEPT into steel. This is the next, unspoken phase of your education. The state intentionally underfeeds you to force you into a life of petty crime. It's a bizarre paradox. In the adult Spartan world, theft is a serious offense, punished like any other crime. But for you, a boy in the Agoge, it is not only encouraged, it is a critical part of your training. It's framed as a virtue, a necessary skill for a future soldier who might one day need to live off the land or raid enemy supplies, a sanitized term for what is, in essence, a brutal, high-stakes game. The rules are simple and unforgiving. You must steal food to supplement your diet. You can target the kitchens of the Agoge, the private homes of citizens, or, the most challenging and rewarding target, the nearby farms and fields of the helots. Helots are the state-owned serfs, a subjugated population who work the land and provide the agricultural backbone for the Spartan state. They are your primary hunting ground. The objective is not just to acquire food, but to do so with absolute stealth. The crime is not in the act of stealing itself. The crime is in getting caught. So you begin. At first, you are clumsy, desperate. You might try a direct approach, a quick snatch and grab from a kitchen storeroom, only to be caught by a watchful cook or an older boy who sets a trap for novices like you. The punishment for being caught is swift and harsh. You are dragged before your peers in the pedo nomos. You are stripped and flogged, not for the theft, but for your incompetence. The lashes sting, but the shame burns hotter. You have failed the test. You were not clever enough, not quiet enough, not cunning enough. It's a lesson seared into your skin. Failure is pain, but ineptitude is disgrace. You learn from this. You spend less time thinking about your empty stomach and more time studying your environment. You learn the routines of the helot farmers. When do they leave their huts to work the fields? Where do they store their meager supplies of cheese, bread, or dried fruit? You learn to read the landscape, to use the shadows of an olive grove as cover, to move as silently as a stray dog. Your senses, sharpened by hunger, become hyper-aware. The snap of a twig underfoot sounds like a thunderclap. The distant bark of a dog makes your heart pound against your ribs. This foraging is not a solo activity. You form small, silent packs with the other boys in your herd. You learn to work as a team, creating diversions, acting as lookouts. One of you might deliberately make a noise on one side of a helot's hut, drawing their attention, while another slips in through an unguarded opening on the other side. You learn to communicate with hand signals, a flick of the wrist, a subtle nod. This is not just about stealing a loaf of bread. It is your first lesson in tactical coordination, the same skills you will one day use on the battlefield. Historical sources, like Xenophon, another Greek writer who admired the Spartans, describe this system in detail. He presents it as a brilliant educational strategy to produce resourceful and daring soldiers. However, it's easy to romanticize. Imagine the reality for a moment. You are an 8 or 9-year-old boy, driven by gnawing hunger, risking a brutal whipping for the chance to steal a handful of olives. It's a cruel and stressful existence. The constant fear of being caught, the pressure to succeed, the physical punishment of failure, it all combines to create a deep-seated toughness. And what about the helots? This is a point some modern historians emphasize. For them, you are not a student in a cunning educational program. You are a pest, a predator. The food you steal is not surplus, it is their own sustenance, often just as meager as your Spartan. And they are not without their own defenses. They set traps. They keep watchful dogs. They might even administer their own form of rough justice if they can catch you without official witnesses. The game is dangerous for everyone involved. Slowly, you get better at it. You learn the timing, the silence, the art of the unseen. The hunger is still there, but now it's a tool. It's the whetstone that sharpens your wits. You are no longer just a hungry boy. You are becoming a hunter. Your transformation into a proficient thief is gradual, a craft honed through failure and fear. It is, as the elders would say, an art form. The first time you succeed, the prize is almost laughably small. Perhaps it's a single hard apple, snatched from a helot's sack left unattended by the edge of a field. You don't eat it right away. The risk is too great. You secret it away inside your rough tunic, the lump a constant, thrilling reminder of your achievement. Only later, in the dead of night, huddled in the cold barracks, do you dare to eat it. You devour it in silent, frantic bites, the crisp, sour flesh an explosion of flavor in your bland world. It's more than just food, it's a taste of victory. You learn that stealth is paramount. It's a full-body discipline. It's in the way you place your feet, heel to toe, to make the least sound on dry leaves. It's in controlling your breathing, keeping it slow and steady even when your heart is hammering. It's in using the wind, understanding that a sudden gust can mask the sound of your movement. You learn to think like your prey, to anticipate their actions. You aren't just reacting to opportunities, you are creating them. The targets become more ambitious. A lone piece of fruit is a beginner's prize. A whole loaf of barley bread from a farmer's table is a sign of intermediate skill. The true masters, the older boys you once envied, aim for the ultimate prize, roasted meat. This is the black diamond of your illicit curriculum. To steal a cooked piece of pork or goat requires a military precision. You have to infiltrate a communal meal area, perhaps during a helot's celebration or a private citizen's gathering, where the smell of roasting meat is a siren call. The risks are exponentially higher. More people, more light, more dogs. One night, your small group decides to try. The target is a helot overseer's hut, where a small pig is being roasted on a spit for some minor occasion. Your team spends days in observation. You map out the area, noting the blind spots, the patterns of the guards if any, the location of the dogs, and the timing of the feast. Your plan is a masterpiece of youthful cunning. One boy is tasked with creating a diversion far down the path, a sudden shout, a rock thrown into the bushes, just enough to draw attention for a precious few seconds. Another is the lookout, perched in a tree, ready to give a pre-arranged bird call if anyone approaches. You are the extractor. At the designated moment, the diversion happens. Heads turn. In that sliver of time, you dart from the shadows. Your bare feet make no sound on the packed earth. You don't go for the whole pig, that's foolish, too heavy and too noticeable. You have a small, sharp stone you've prepared. Your goal is to slice off a chunk of meat from the side facing away from the firelight. Your hands are shaking, but your mind is clear. The smell is dizzying, a rich, fatty aroma that makes your stomach clench. You slice quickly. The meat is hot, searing your fingers, but you don't flinch. You wrap the prize in a piece of cloth you brought for this purpose, tuck it into your tunic, and melt back into the darkness. The entire operation takes less than 10 seconds. Back in the safety of the woods, you rendezvous with your team. You unwrap the spoils. It's a greasy, slightly charred piece of pork. You divide it with the same precision used to plan the raid. Your portion is small, just a few mouthfuls, but it's the most delicious thing you have ever tasted. It's the flavor of teamwork, of courage, of successful rebellion against the gnawing hunger. This entire system, while appearing to champion thievery, had a very specific, and some might say twisted, moral compass. The lesser-known aspect of this is the involvement of the older boys. The ironies, these were young men, just shy of full citizenship, who were put in charge of the younger boys' herds. They not only encouraged the stealing but also acted as a sort of secret police. They would sometimes deliberately plant food, a bait, to test the boy's skills. They might even know a boy was going on a raidant watch from the shadows, judging his technique. This adds a layer of psychological complexity. You're not just trying to outsmart a farmer, you're performing for a hidden, critical audience of your peers and superiors. Historians still debate the true efficacy of this method. Did it really create better soldiers, or did it just create a generation of traumatized young men with questionable morals? Proponents, like Xenophon, saw it as a perfect microcosm of warfare, taught stealth, logistics, risk assessment, and grace under pressure. Critics, both ancient and modern, might argue it institutionalized bullying and created a society built on the oppression of its lowest class, turning state-sanctioned child abuse into a virtue. For you, huddled in the dark, chewing on your hard-won piece of meat, the philosophical debate is irrelevant. You have learned a vital lesson. The world does not give you what you need. You must take it. And the art of taking, you now understand, is the art of survival. You are becoming a true Spartan. The lessons learned in the art of stealing are inevitably punctuated by the lessons of failure. And in the Agoge, failure is a public and painful spectacle. Sooner or later, your luck runs out. Perhaps you misjudge the weight of your foot on a loose floorboard. Perhaps the wind shifts at the wrong moment, carrying your scent to a watchful dog. Or perhaps you simply get too bold, too confident, and you make a rookie mistake. One evening, you spot an opportunity that seems too good to be true. A basket of figs, freshly picked, sits on a windowsill of a citizen's home, left to cool in the evening air. It's an easy target, almost indulgently so. There are no dogs, no obvious watchers. Your stomach crumbles in anticipation. Figs are a rare treat, a burst of natural sweetness in a world of savory blandness. Driven by that familiar gnawing hunger and a touch of hubris, you abandon the caution that has served you so well. You decide to act alone, without a lookout, without a plan. You slip into the shadows of the alleyway, your heart a steady drum of confidence. You reach the window. Your fingers are just brushing the rough weave of the basket when a heavy hand clamps down on your shoulder. Your blood runs cold. A figure emerges from the darkened doorway you hadn't noticed. It's the owner of the house, a full-fledged Spartan citizen, his face grim and impassive. He doesn't say a word. He simply tightens his grip and marches you back toward the Agoge barracks. The walk is the longest of your life. Every step is a drumbeat of shame. You are not taken to the paid onomos right away. Instead, you are made to wait. You are placed in the center of the barracks courtyard, under the moonlight, for all to see. The other boys, your peers, gather. They don't mock you, not out loud. There's a grim, silent understanding. This could have been any one of them. Your failure is a lesson for them all. The man who caught you speaks in low tones to your the young man in charge of your herd. Your fate is now in his hands. The Iran approaches. He holds a whip, likely made of strips of ox hide. It's a tool you've seen before, but never this close. He circles you, his voice low but carrying in the quiet courtyard. He doesn't berate you for stealing. He berates you for your sloppiness. You were seen, he says, his voice laced with disappointment. You were heard. You thought with your stomach, not your head. You brought shame not to yourself, but to the herd. Then the punishment begins. The whip cracks, and a searing line of fire erupts across your back. You bite down on your lip to keep from crying out. A scream would be the ultimate disgrace, a sign of weakness that would earn you twice the punishment and endless scorn. You focus on the ground, on the dust illuminated by the moon, on anything but the pain. Lash after lash falls, each one a sharp, brutal punctuation mark to your failure. The message is being written onto your skin. Stealth is life, exposure is pain. This practice of flogging boys caught stealing is one of the most well documented. and perhaps most disturbing, aspects of the Agoge. The Greek historian Plutarch tells a particularly extreme story, which may be an exaggeration but reveals the core value of the ordeal. He writes of a boy who had stolen a live fox, hiding it under his tunic. To avoid being discovered, the boy allowed the desperate animal to claw and bite at his stomach, disemboweling him without flinching or crying out, and eventually died, all to avoid the shame of being caught as a clumsy thief. Historians debate whether this specific event is literal truth, but it serves as a powerful allegory for the Spartan mindset. Physical pain, even death, is preferable to dishonor. The whipping finally ends. Your back is a latticework of raw, stinging welts. You are left standing there, swaying on your feet, the adrenaline and pain making the world seem distant and hazy. No one offers a word of sympathy. You are expected to endure this, to absorb the lesson, and to return to your duties the next day without complaint. You stumble back to your cot, every movement an agony. As you lie there in the dark, the physical pain is overwhelmed by a cold, hard resolve. You will not be caught again. You will be better, quieter, smarter. This isn't just about punishment, it's about forging a specific kind of mentality. It's about teaching you to suppress your own pain, to disconnect from physical suffering in pursuit of a greater goal. It's a brutal form on your back are more than just marks of failure. They are your diploma from the school of hard knocks, a permanent entry reminder of the price of incompetence. In the twisted logic of Sparta, these scars are a badge of honor, proof that you have been tested by the system and have, in your own painful way, passed. There are nights, however, when the risk pays off. Nights when your stealth, your planning, and your teamwork culminate in a successful raid. The treasures you bring back are never grand, but, in the context of your perpetually hungry existence, they are feast fit for a king. Huddled together in the darkness of the barracks, far from the watchful eyes of the IRNS, you and your small band of thieves share the spoils. This is where the true flavors of your childhood are discovered, not in the mess hall, but in the shadows. One of your most common and prized acquisitions is cheese. Not a fine, aged cheese, but a simple, rustic goat or sheep's milk cheese, likely made by a helot family for their own consumption. You unwrap it from the cloth you've used to smuggle it in. The aroma is sharpened tangy, a powerful scent that you have to be careful dose and travel. You break it apart with your hands, ensuring everyone in your group gets an equal share. The texture is firm, maybe a little rubbery, and the taste is salty and strong. It's a burst of protein and fat that your body craves, a satisfying, dense food that feels substantial in your stomach. Another staple of your illicit diet is the barley cake or maza in the mess hall. You get a version of this, but it's often stale and dry. The ones you steal are fresher, softer. They are the ancient equivalent of a hearty peasant bread, made from barley flour water, and not much else. Sometimes, if you're particularly lucky, you might find one that has been mixed with a little honey or olive oil. To your unrefined palate, this is the height of culinary decadence. You eat it slowly, making each bite last, the rough texture scraping the roof of your mouth. It's not just sustenance, it's a comfort, a small piece of normalcy in a life of rigid discipline. Occasionally, your raids on the helot farms yield something more exotic. A handful of olives, cured in brine, their salty, slightly bitter taste a welcome shock to the system. You learn to eat them pits and all, wasting nothing. Or perhaps some sun-dried figs, sticky and intensely sweet, the natural candy that feels almost impossibly luxurious. You eat them one by one, the tiny seeds crunching between your teeth. The sugary flesh is stark contrast to the blandness of your official diet. These are the moments you live for, the small victories that make the hunger and the risk of punishment worthwhile. One of the more peculiar and sought-after items, according to some ancient sources, was a type of wild edible root. This required a different kind of skill, not theft, but actual foraging knowledge passed down from older boys. You had to learn to identify the right plants, to know which roots were nutritious and which were poisonous. Digging them up was a quiet, careful process. Once secured, you would eat them raw, the taste earthy and a little gritty, but filling. This speaks to a lesser-known aspect of your training, a basic understanding of botany and survival in the wild. Skills that would be invaluable on a military campaign. The sharing of this stolen food is a ritual in itself. It's an act of profound trust and camaraderie. These boys, who you compete with fiercely during the day in wrestling matches and races, become your confidants and co-conspirators at night. The bond forged over a stolen piece of cheese in the dark is, in many ways, stronger than any bond forged in the training yard. It's a loyalty born of shared risk and shared reward. You learn that a successful team relies on each member's competence and silence. A single boastful word could doom you all. There is an ongoing discussion among historians about the exact nutritional makeup of a young Spartan's diet, including these stolen supplements. While the official rations were clearly calorie deficient, did this foraging system actually balance things out? Some scholars argue that it might have inadvertently provided a more varied, if inconsistent, diet than the state-issued one. The boys were getting access to fresh produce, fats, and different sources of protein that were absent from their daily gruel. Others suggest this is wishful thinking, and that the vast majority of boys were chronically undernourished, with these stolen scraps being too infrequent to make a significant difference. The truth, as is often the case, probably lies somewhere in the middle. It was a system of survival, not nutrition. For you, these secret meals are the highlight of your young life. They are a rebellion, a declaration of your own agency in a system designed to strip you of it. As you lie on your hard cot, the satisfying weight of a full stomach, a rare and precious feeling, you are not just digesting food. You are digesting the lessons of the night: courage, stealth, teamwork, and the sweet, unforgettable taste of a well-earned prize. It's a flavor that will stay with you long after the memory of the barley gruel has faded. The years in the Agoge are a blur of hardship, training, and secret, stolen meals. You grow taller, leaner, and harder. The softness of childhood has been burned away, replaced by a sinewy toughness. At the age of 20, you graduate. You are no longer a boy, Pays, but a young man. You might even be put in charge of a herd of younger boys yourself, perpetuating the same brutal cycle of hunger and theft that forged you. But you are not yet a full citizen. You are still in a state of transition, a warrior in training. The final, and perhaps most significant, step in your journey to becoming a Spartan man has nothing to do with the battlefield. It has to do with the dining table. To be granted the full rights and honors of a Spartan citizen, a homo ios, one of the similar res or peers, you must be accepted into a Syssitia, a communal mess hall. This is not optional. It is the absolute prerequisite for citizenship. The Syssitia, which in Sparta was more specifically called the Fidetia, is the cornerstone of Spartan society. It's a dining club, a military fraternity, and a political unit all rolled into one. There are many of these dining groups, each composed of about 15 men. These are the men you will live with, eat with, and fight alongside for the rest of your life. They will be your brothers in a way your blood relatives never could be. Your acceptance into one of these groups is a formal acknowledgement that you have become one of them up here. The election process is nerve-wracking. It is, in its own way, as judgmental as the wine bath test you endured as an infant. The existing members of the mess vote on your admission. The method is simple and secretive. Each man takes a small piece of bread, a sort of dough ball. As he walks past a container, he drops the bread in. If he approves of you, he drops against your entry. He flattens the piece of bread between his thumb and forefinger before dropping it in. This flattened bread is the no vote. After everyone has voted, the container is emptied, and the bread is counted. A single flattened piece, just one no vote, is enough to den absolute consensus and harmony within the unit. One man's objection, for any reason, perhaps he thinks you are a coward, or arrogant, or simply that you won't fit in, is sufficient for rejection. This is why your reputation, your entire life in the Agoge, is so critical. You have been observed and judged by these older men for years. This vote is the culmination of their assessment. There's a significant amount of debate among historians about the true nature of this voting process. Was it really that simple? Some suggest that there would have been informal discussions on lobbying beforehand, that a young man would be sponsored by an older relative or mentor who would smooth the path for his entry. A public rejection would be a huge dishonor, not just for the young man but for his family, so it's likely that candidates were pre-vetted to ensure they would pass. The Black Bull system, however, remains the most commonly cited tradition, emphasizing the group's power over the individual. It's a system designed to weed out anyone who might disrupt the unit's cohesion. You stand weighing while the votes are cast. The men who walk past you are faces you've known your whole life, fathers of your friends, celebrated warriors, the very men you've aspired to be. Their expressions are unreadable. You hold your breath as the bread is tallied. One by one, the round, soft dough balls are pulled from the urn, no flattened pieces. You have been accepted. A wave of relief washes over you. This is it. This is the moment you become a man. You are now a peer, a homo. You have a seat at the table. You will take your meals here, in this hall, every single day. This is not just a place to eat, it is the center of your universe. Here, political discussions will happen, strategies will be debated, and the bonds of the phalanx will be forged over shared meals. Failure to attend, even for a legitimate reason like being on a hunting trip, required you to send a portion of your kill to the mess hall as a sign of respect. You take your designated spot on the simple wooden bench. The room is plain, functional, devoid of any decoration. There are no reclining couches like the ones you hear about in extravagant Athenian symposia. You sit upright, ready. The air is thick with the smell of wood smoke, sweat, and something else, a pungent, slightly metallic, and deeply unpleasant aroma that you recognize from whispered stories. It's the smell of the legendary staple of the Spartan diet. You are about to have your first official taste of melis di omos, the infamous black broth. Your real culinary education is just beginning. Now that you are a member of the Syssitia, you are not just a guest, you are a shareholder. And like any exclusive club, this one has dues. Your seat at the table is conditional upon your monthly contribution of provisions. This is not a suggestion, it's an unbreakable rule, a core pillar of the Spartan system established by the legendary lawgiver Lycurgus. Fail to pay your dues, and your membership is revoked. Revoke your membership, and you lose your citizenship. It's that simple. You become an outcast, a lesser, stripped of your rights and honor. The social pressure is immense. Each month, every single member of the mess, from the youngest new recruit to the most grizzled veteran, is required to provide a specific, measured amount of goods from their kale arrows, the plot of agricultural land assigned to them by the state and worked by helots. This system was designed to create a sense of absolute equality. In theory, no man was richer than another at the dining table, because everyone brought the exact same buy-in. The list of required items is precise and telling. Each month, you must contribute 1 medimons of barley, roughly 73 liters. This is the foundational grain, the stuff of your daily bread and porridge. Next, 8 sihos of wine, about 24 liters. This will be the base for the watered-down drink that accompanies every meal. Then 5 mn as of cheese, around 2.5 kilograms. And finally, half a mna of figs, a small but essential contribution of sweetness. You don't personally farm this land or press the grapes. That is the work of the helots. Your responsibility is to manage your estate effectively enough to ensure this quota is met, month after month, without fail. This contribution system is a fascinating piece of social engineering. On one hand, it reinforces the collective ideal everyone gives and everyone receives from the common pot. On the other, it creates a constant, low-grade anxiety. A bad harvest, a lazy or rebellious helot manager, a pest infestation, any of these could jeopardize your ability to pay your dues and, consequently, your entire social standing. there's a curious little detail often overlooked in this monthly contribution. What about the meat? The barley, wine, cheese, and figs are specified, but the most famous dish, the black broth, requires pork. This is where the system gets a bit more flexible and, frankly, a bit more interesting. Meat was not part of the standard monthly fee. Instead, it was supplied through other means. The state might provide a pig from a public herd, or, more commonly, members would contribute meat from their own hunts. Hunting was not just a leisure activity for the Spartan elite, it was a crucial part of their social and economic life. When you successfully hunted a deer or a wild boar, it was expected that you would share a portion of it with your messmates. This was a way to gain status and show your prowess. Sometimes, a wealthier citizen might contribute a larger animal as an act of generosity, a sort of treat for the group. This is one of the subtle ways that this equality of the mess hall could be bent. While every onus-based contribution was the same, a man who was a better hunter or had a more productive estate could still distinguish himself through these extra contributions. This is a point of contention for scholars. How equal were the homo? Really, the contribution system suggests a flat, communistic structure. But the variable additions of meat and the fact that some men owned more private wealth, which was technically not supposed to exist, but clearly did suggest a more complex social hierarchy, was at play. The official rule was equality, the reality was likely a constant. Subtle competition for honor and influence played out through these voluntary gifts to the mess. It's a classic case of historical record telling one story, while human nature suggests another. For now, you are just focused on meeting the basic requirements. You make arrangements with the helots on your land. You inspect the barley harvest. You check the wine storage. You ensure the cheeses are being made. You are no longer just a soldier, you are a landowner, a manager, a provider for your new family of 15 brothers. The weight of this responsibility is heavy. It's a different kind of pressure from the physical trials of the Agoge. This is the pressure of adulthood, of maintaining your place in the rigid Spartan world. As you deliver your first month's contribution, the heavy sack of barley, the sloshing wineskin, the wheels of cheese, and the small bag of figs, you feel a sense of pride. You are a contributing member of the state. You have paid your way. You take your seat on the hard bench, the smells of the mess hall swirling around you. The table is set. The contributions have been pooled. Now, it's time to eat what you've all paid for. The moment has arrived. You've navigated the brutal trials of the Agoge, survived the high-stakes game of theft, then secured your place at the table. You've paid your dues. Now you face the culinary rite of passage that defines Spartan manhood, your first official bowl of melis, Ziomos, the black broth. The name itself is unappetizing. It doesn't evoke images of a hearty, comforting stew. It sounds like what it is, something dark, mysterious, and vaguely threatening. As a young boy in the Agoge, you heard whispers about it. Older boys would tell horror stories, describing it with a grimace. Travelers from other, more refined, Greek city-states were said to have recoiled at the mere sight of it. The broth has a reputation that precedes it, a legend built on disgust. A helot servant, moving silently through the hall, places a shallow, unadorned clay bowl in front of you. It's filled with a dark, murky liquid. It is not quite black, but a deep, unsettling shade of reddish-brown, like dried blood mixed with mud. Floating within this grim liquid are unfightable chunks of meat and what appears to be congealed bits of fat. The steam that rises from it doesn't carry the savory aroma of a well-seasoned soup. Instead, it's a pungent, metallic, and harsh smell that assaults your nostrils. It's the smell of a butcher's floor mixed with vinegar. You look around at the other men. The veterans, the ones who have been eating this for decades, spoon it into their mouths with a practiced indifference. It's neither a pleasure nor a punishment for them anymore. It's just a fact of life, like the rising of the sun. The other new members, your peers, share the same look of trepidation that you feel. There's a silent, shared understanding you must eat this, and you must do so without showing any sign of disgust. To refuse or to grimace would be a sign of softness. of being un-Spartan. It would be a social failure in your very first meal as a citizen. You dip your spoon, likely a simple carved wooden one, into the bowl. The liquid is thin yet has a greasy quality. You lift it to your lips, hesitating for a fraction of a second. You force yourself to take the first sip. The taste is challenging. The primary flavor is an overwhelming saltiness, immediately followed by a sharp, acidic kick from vinegar. Underneath that is the heavy, irony taste of blood. It's like licking a rusty nail that's been soaked in brine. The broth itself is lukewarm, which somehow makes it worse. Then you get to the solids. The chunks of meat are tough and sinewy, boiled to a point where any original flavor has been obliterated, replaced by the dominant taste of the broth. They are chewy and require significant effort to break down. This is not a meal to be savored. It is a meal to be endured. You swallow. The broth leaves a greasy, unpleasant film on your tongue and in the back of your throat. You immediately want to drink water to wash it away, but you know you must continue. You take another spoonful, and then another. You focus on the mechanical act of eating, disassociating from the taste and texture. This is just another test, a daily affirmation of your toughness. You are a Spartan. You eat black broth. There is a fascinating historical debate about just how universally this broth was consumed and whether its legendary awfulness is an exaggeration. Some historians believe that while it was a staple, it might not have been the only thing eaten at every meal. It was likely the main course, the great equalizer, but it would have been supplemented by the barley bread, cheese, and figs that everyone contributed. The broth was the symbol, the mandatory element, while the other items made the meal palatable. A little-known fact is that Spartan cooks were a specific class of craftsmen. It's a funny thought, a chef whose entire career is dedicated to perfecting a recipe that everyone hates. What a CV that would be. You can't help but think of the stories you've heard about the Athenians. You imagine them reclining on their plush couches, feasting on roasted birds, fresh fish drizzled with olive oil, and honey cakes, all while engaging in philosophical debate. The contrast is jarring. Theirs is a culture of pleasure, of indulgence. Yours is a culture of denial. And in this moment, spooning this vile concoction into your mouth, you feel a surge of pride. You are not soft like them. You derive your strength from this very act of self-denial. Eating this broth is what separates you from the rest of the world. It's a badge of honor, a mark of your elite, hardened status. You finish the bowl, every last drop. You set it down with a quiet finality. You have passed the test. You have officially broken bread, or rather, broth with your brothers. The unpleasant taste lingers in your mouth, a constant reminder of who you are and what is expected of you. This is your life now. This is the taste of citizenship. You've survived your first taste of the black broth. But the question lingers in your mind, a taste almost as foul as the soup itself. What, by the gods, is actually in this stuff? The recipe for melis eomos was not something proudly displayed in a cookbook. It was a functional, uncelebrated concoction, and its exact ingredients are a subject of some historical reconstruction, pieced together from ancient texts and a bit of educated guesswork. But the core components are consistently cited, and they are as unglamorous as the final product. The base of the broth is, unsurprisingly, the pig, but not the prime cuts. You're not getting pork loin or tender belly. The primary ingredient, according to most sources, is boiled pig's legs and hocks. These are the parts of the animal full of bone, gristle, and connective tissue. When boiled for a long time, the collagen in these parts breaks down and thickens the liquid, giving it a gelatinous, slightly sticky quality. It's a cheap and practical way to use every part of the animal, a hallmark of frugal cooking throughout history. So, the chunks you were chewing on were likely bits of boiled down shank meat and cartilage. The second key ingredient, and the one responsible for the broth's signature color and metallic taste, is blood. The practice of using blood in food is not unique to Sparta. Blood sausages and blood puddings are found in many cultures, often as a way to preserve a valuable source of protein. In the black broth, the blood serves as a thickener and a coloring agent. It's what turns the soup from a pale, watery stock into that murky dark brew, forming some of the small, soft, and slightly grainy solids you might have found at the bottom of your bowl. It's also packed with iron, giving the broth its rusty, almost medicinal flavor. So far, we have boiled pig's feet in blood. It's already not a winning combination for the modern palate. But the Spartans weren't done. The next ingredient is salt, lots of it. Salt was a crucial preservative, but it was also the primary seasoning available. In a dish with few other redeeming qualities, a heavy hand with the salt was likely used to make it at least somewhat flavorful, albeit in a brutally one-dimensional way. This explains the overwhelming saltiness that hits you on the first sip. The final, and perhaps most important, ingredient is vinegar, a strong, sharp wine vinegar. This is the secret weapon, the ingredient that makes the black broth truly unique. The vinegar serves several purposes. First, it acts as a preservative, its acidity helping to keep the broth from spoiling quickly. Second, and this is a fascinating bit of food science, the acid in the vinegar would have prevented the pig's blood from coagulating too quickly when it was added to the pot, allowing it to mix more smoothly into the stock. Third, it provides the sharp, sour counterpoint to the salt in the iron-rich blood. It's what cuts through the easiness and gives the broth its distinctive tangy, and for most people, deeply unpleasant kick. So, let's assemble the recipe. You take a cauldron. You throw in a bunch of pig's legs. You cover them with water and boil them for hours until the meat is falling off the bone and the water has become a greasy, collagen-rich stock. Then, you stir in a generous amount of fresh pig's blood, being careful not to let it curdle. You season it aggressively with salt. Finally, you finish it with a large splash of strong vinegar. You let it all simmer together into a harmonious sludge. That is your black broth. There is, of course, an academic debate about potential secret ingredients. Were there any herbs used, perhaps some wild thyme or oregano, thrown in to cut the foulness? The major historical sources, like Plutarch, don't mention any. The prevailing theory is that the beauty of the black broth, if you can call it that, was in its brutal simplicity. Adding pleasant-tasting herbs would defeat the entire purpose of the dish, which was to be a trial of endurance, not a source of pleasure. A strange and little-known theory proposed by some is that the recipe might have evolved. Perhaps in earlier, leaner times, it was made with whatever was available, and the pig's blood and vinegar recipe was just the most famous version. There is speculation, for instance, that on campaign, a similar broth could have been made with goat or other animals. The core principle remained the same: use the cheapest parts, use the blood, and make it last. As you sit in the mess hall day after day, you become a connoisseur of this culinary horror. You can tell when the broth is a fresh batch versus one that's a day or two old. You can discern the subtle differences. Sometimes it's saltier, other times more vinegary. You don't enjoy it, not in the traditional sense, but you come to understand it. This isn't food. This isn't food. Every ingredient, the cast-off meat, the blood, the harsh salt, the sharp vinegar, is a symbol of the Spartan virtues: frugality, utility, and a complete rejection of luxury. The recipe isn't just a list of ingredients, it's a written constitution in a bowl. The black broth is more than just a staple of your diet. It's a piece of cultural identity, a running joke, and a source of grim pride. Its legendary awfulness becomes a way for you and your comrades to define yourselves against the rest of the Greek world. You don't just eat the broth, you embrace its fearsome reputation. Stories about it are told and retold in the mess hall, not with disgust, but with a kind of dark humor. The most famous of these stories, one that you've probably heard a dozen times, concerns a visitor from Sybaris. Sybaris was an ancient Greek city in southern Italy, a place so famous for its wealth, luxury, and devotion to pleasure that its name gives us the modern word sybarite, meaning a person who indulges in sensual luxury. This sybarite, a man accustomed to the finest food and wine, was visiting Sparta, perhaps on a diplomatic mission. Out of curiosity, or perhaps politeness, he accepted an invitation to dine in a Spartan mess hall. As the story goes, he was served a bowl of the black broth. He watched as the Spartan warriors around him consumed it without comment. Mustering his courage, he took a spoonful. His reaction was immediate and visceral. He allegedly gagged, pushed the bowl away, and shuddered. Later, he would famously remark, and this is the punchline, that every Spartan cherishes. Now I understand why you Spartans do not fear death. This anecdote, whether literally true or well-polished piece of propaganda, perfectly encapsulates the Spartan self-image. Your food is so terrible that the sweet release of death on the battlefield seems like a preferable alternative. You and your messmates chuckle every time you hear this story. It's funny because it's probably true. You take a strange sort of pride in the fact that your national dish is considered a fate worse than death by the soft, decadent foreigners. It reinforces your belief in your own execrablicious. You are not just warriors, you are men who have conquered the most fundamental of human desires, the desire for pleasant-tasting food. The broth becomes a litmus test for outsiders. When a diplomat or a traveler from another city-state like Athens or Corinth visits, you watch them closely when the broth is served. Their reaction tells you everything you need to know about them. Do they try it? Do they recoil in horror? Do they politely choke down a few spoonfuls? Their ability, or inability, to stomach your food is a direct measure of their character in your eyes. It separates the men from the sybarites. This is a recurring theme in how Spartans are portrayed by other Greeks. The historian Herodotus tells a story about the Persian general Mardonius after the Battle of Plataea. After capturing the lavish tent of the defeated Persian commander, he ordered the Persian cooks to prepare a magnificent feast as they would have for their master. At the same time, he ordered his own Spartan cooks to prepare a typical Laconian meal. When both were ready, he summoned the other Greek commander. He gestured to the Persian feast with its rich carpets, gold and silver dinnerware, and mountains of decadent food, and then to the Spartan meal, a humble bowl of black broth and a barley cake on a simple wooden table. He laughed and said something to the effect of, "Look at the foolishness of the Persians, who live like this, yet came to rob us of this." Now, historians debate the exact phrasing and context of this tale. Was Mardonius being entirely genuine, or was it a bit of theatrical posturing for his fellow Greeks? It's likely a bit of both. But the story serves the same purpose as the Sybarite tale. It highlights the stark contrast between Spartan austerity and foreign luxury, framing the former as a source of moral and military strength. This concept is a powerful psychological tool. By constantly framing your hardship as a virtue, you transform a negative experience into a positive one. The blandness of your food isn't a deprivation, it's a discipline. The discomfort of your life isn't a burden, it's a source of strength. This mental reframing is essential for maintaining morale in a system that demands so much from you. It's a collective coping mechanism. Even the humor in the mess hall reflects this. The jokes are dry, understated, and often self-deprecating, the style that would later be described as laconic, after your region, Laconia. A man might finish his bowl of broth and say, "The cook outdid himself tonight. I could almost taste the pig." It's a shared gallows humor. You are all in this together, enduring the same bland food, the same hard life. The black broth is the glue that holds you together, a shared trial that binds you more tightly than any oath. It's the secret ingredient in the recipe for Spartan brotherhood. It's so bad, it's good. While the black broth is the undisputed, murky star of your daily meals, it is not the only thing that passes your lips. Life in the mess hall is not just a monotonous cycle of enduring the same foul soup. The monthly contributions of your fellow members provide the rest of the meal, a spread of simple, functional foods that, while far from luxurious, offer a welcome counterpoint to the broth. These are what you might consider the luxuries of the Spartan table, though that term would make an Athenian laugh. The most prominent side dish is the barley cake. or maza, which you also received as your monthly due. This is your primary source of carbohydrates, the fuel for your grueling physical regimen. It's a dense, flat, unleavened bread, made from the coarse, barley flour everyone contributes. It's not light and dairy. It's heavy, substantial, and requires a good deal of chewing. You use it to sop up the last dregs of the black broth, a functional tool to make sure no drop of the precious, awful stuff goes to waste. Sometimes, if the harvest was good, it might be made with wheat instead of barley, a subtle upgrade in quality that everyone would notice and appreciate. Next on the table are the fruits of your other contributions, cheese and figs. The cheese is the same hard, salty goat or sheep's milk cheese you once risked a whipping to steal as a boy. Now you can eat it freely, though still in moderation. You break off a piece and eat it with your barley cake. The sharp, tangy flavor is a powerful contrast to the blandness of the bread and the soreness of the broth. It provides much-needed fat and protein, a dense packet of energy. Figs are your primary source of sweetness. There are no honey cakes, no sweetened pastries. Your dessert is a simple, natural fruit. When in season, they are fresh, plump, and bursting with sugary pulp. For the rest of the year, you eat them dried, their flavor concentrated into a chewy, leathery sweetness. A handful of figs after a bowl of black broth is a profound relief, a small, permissible pleasure that cleanses the palate and signals the end of the meal. Beyond these staples, the diet is occasionally supplemented by other items. Olives, a cornerstone of the Mediterranean diet, are common. They are usually cured in brine, providing another salty, savory element to the meal. You eat them pits and all. There's a peculiar little detail that some classical writers mention Spartan boys were sometimes given a specific number of olives and expected to make them last for a certain period. A lesson in rationing. Whether this level of micromanagement continued into adulthood is unclear, but the principle of moderation certainly did. Fish and seafood, despite Sparta's relative proximity to the sea, do not seem to have been a major part of the regular mess hall diet. This is a point of some curiosity for historians. Why would a Greek state not take more advantage of the sea? One theory is that farming and land-based self-sufficiency were considered more honorable and stable than the more mercantile or trade-dependent life of a coastal fishing community. Fishing was perhaps seen as a less Spartan profession. It's likely that fish was eaten, just not as a regular part of the official Syssitia meal. A man might catch fish in the Eurotas River and share it, much like he would share game from a hunt. The most prized additions to the table, the true luxuries, were the spoils of the hunt. When a member brought in a wild boar or a deer, the atmosphere in the mess hall would change. The animal would be roasted, and for one night, the meal would be celebratory. You would receive a portion of roasted meat, a gerez, which was a share of honor. This meat, unlike the boiled gristle in the black broth, was flavorful, rich, and deeply satisfying. It was a taste of abundance, a reward for skill and prowess in the hunt. These were the meals you remembered, the feasts that punctuated the routine of austerity. A little-known but fascinating luxury was a special dish, served only at the KOP, is a specific type of celebratory feast that was a bit more plentiful than the daily meal. This dish consisted of bread, meat, and a special fresh broth, not the black one, along with some raw vegetables like onions. It was still simple by any other standard, but for you, it was a banquet, so you pieced together your meal, a spoonful of black broth, followed by a bite of barley cake and cheese. A few olives on the side, a sweet fig for dessert. It's a diet built on a few core, repeating flavors: salty, sour, savory, and a little bit of sweet at the end. It's balanced in its own severe way, providing the necessary fuel for a warrior's life. It is not designed to delight the senses, but to sustain the body. Every element on the table, from the awful broth to the simple figs, serves the same ultimate purpose: to reinforce the central tenets of Spartan life discipline, equality, and the absolute rejection of anything that might make a man soft. The liquid in your cup is as important as the food in your bowl, and it's governed by the same strict principles of moderation and utility. The drink of choice in your mess hall, and indeed throughout ancient Greece, is wine. But if you're imagining lavish symposia with free-flowing, intoxicating drink, you need to recalibrate your expectations. This is Sparta. You don't drink wine for pleasure, you drink it for hydration and calories, and always in a very specific, controlled manner. The wine you drink is part of your monthly contribution to the mess. It's a local vintage, likely a strong dark red wine produced from the vineyards on your Kale Arrows, but you never, ever drink it neat. To drink in mixed wine, akratos, was considered the absolute height of barbarism, a practice associated with wild, uncivilized peoples like the Scythians, or a sign of profound personal weakness. A true Greek, and especially a Spartan, always mixed their wine with water. The process of mixing is a ritual in itself. It's done in a large ceramic vessel called a crater. The wine is poured in, and then water is added. The ratio of water to wine was a matter of serious consideration and could vary, but a common ratio was 3 or 4 parts water to 1 part wine. The goal was not to get drunk. The goal was to create a beverage that was safe to drink. The alcohol helped to kill bacteria in the water, a crucial feature in the ancient world, and that could be consumed in quantity throughout the meal without clouding the mind or loosening the tongue too much. For you, this watered-down wine is your daily beverage. It's served in a simple clay or bronze cup. The taste is mild, slightly fruity and acidic, but mostly it just tastes like slightly flavored water. It quenches your thirst after the salty broth and helps wash down the dense barley cake. It provides a small but not insignificant number of calories, contributing to your overall energy intake. It is, in essence, the ancient equivalent of a sports drink: functional, hydrating, and caloric. The Spartan attitude towards drunkenness was one of utter contempt. It was seen as the ultimate loss of self-control, a state where a man became sloppy, irrational, and vulnerable. A drunk man could not fight effectively, could not keep secrets, and could not maintain the rigid discipline that was the hallmark of your society. To lose control of your faculties through the very essence of what it meant to be a Spartan. This disdain for intoxication was so profound that it was actively used as a teaching tool in the Agoge. You remember this from your youth. Periodically, the elders would orchestrate a grotesque and humiliating spectacle for the benefit of you and the other boys. They would take a group of helots, the state-owned serfs, and force them to drink large quantities of unmixed wine. The helots would be dragged into the mess hall, staggering, slurring their words, behaving foolishly, and sometimes singing ridiculous bawdy songs. They were made to perform humiliating dances and generally act the part of the contemptible drunkard. You and the other boys were made to watch this display. It was a lesson in negative reinforcement. This, the elders would say, gesturing to the pathetic scene, is what it looks like to lose control. This is weakness. This is not Spartan. The image was deliberately ugly and debasing, designed to instill in you a deep-seated disgust for drunkenness. It was a powerful, if cruel, piece of psychological conditioning. There is, as with many Spartan practices, an ongoing historical conversation about this. Did this event happen exactly as described by writers like Plutarch? Some historians argue that it's a plausible, if horrifying, example of Spartan social control, a way to simultaneously dehumanize the helots and indoctrinate the young. Others suggest it might be an exaggeration, a story told by outsiders to highlight Spartan cruelty. A lesser-known detail is that some sources claim the helots were forced to sing specific songs that mocked their own subjugation, adding a layer of deep psychological cruelty to the physical act. Whatever the exact details, the core message was clear and effective. You learn it from a young age that wine is a tool, not a treat. It is to be respected and used with discipline. In the mess hall, you see this principle in action every day. The crater is filled, the wine is diluted, and each man drinks his share in a calm and orderly fashion. There is no boisterous toasting, no drinking games, no pressure to overindulge. The conversation remains measured, the atmosphere sober and serious. This practice stands in stark contrast to the symposia of other Greek states, particularly Athens. You hear stories of their drinking parties, which could devolve into debauchery, with philosophical debate giving way to drunken foolishness. You and your messmates view these tales with a mixture of scorn and pity. The Athenians, in your view, are slaves to their appetites. Their lack of discipline in drink a reflection of their overall societal softness. Your watered-down wine, in its very dilution, is a symbol of your superior self-control. It's one more way you define your identity. They are the drunkards, you are the sober warriors. In a world defined by austerity and the rejection of pleasure, what becomes of dessert the very concept of a sweet course, a final, indulgent treat to cap off a meal, is fundamentally alien to the Spartan ethos. You will not see honey-drenched pastries, cheesecakes, or sweet custards in your mess hall. Such things are the domain of the soft, the Sybaritic, the Athenian. For you, the end of a meal is marked not by sweetness, but by a different kind of reward, one rooted in honor and hierarchy. Your daily dessert, if you can call it that, is the handful of figs from your monthly contribution. They provide a brief, welcome burst of natural sugar after the salty, sour assault of the black broth. But this is part of the standard ration, an expected part of the meal. The true Spartan dessert is something rare, something that cannot be bought or demanded. It is a special portion, an extra helping, given as a mark of respect or as a prize. This special portion is called the EPAIKL on it, is a serving of food given to a man from another's portion. This usually happens after a successful hunt. Imagine a senior member of your mess, a respected veteran, has had a particularly successful day hunting boar. He brings his prize to be shared. After the main distribution of the roasted meat, he might take a piece from his own share and give it to a younger man who he feels has distinguished himself, perhaps through bravery in a recent skirmish or exceptional performance in training. To receive an EPA, IKL on is a significant public honor. It's a non-verbal acknowledgement of your worth from a man of higher standing. As he hands you the piece of roasted meat, the entire mess hall watches. It's a small gesture, but it's packed with meaning. It says, I see you. I approve of you. You accept it with a quiet nod of thanks. This extra portion of food tastes better than any honey cake ever could, because its flavor is honor. There's another, stranger way you might receive a dessert. The children of the mess hall members, your own sons included, are sometimes brought in at the end of the meal. They are not given a full serving. Instead, they are given what amounts to half a portion of the main meal. The purpose, according to the historian Xenophon, is to teach them from a young age what adult food is like and to ensure they don't grow up with an insatiable appetite. But there's a little known twist to this. The boys are allowed to receive desserts from the men. A man might save a piece of his barley cake or a few figs and give it to one of the boys. However, the boy who receives these gifts and then becomes spoiled or too proud is subject to punishment by the paid onomos. It's a complicated social game. The men show favor by giving food, but the boys must learn to receive it with humility. It's a lesson in social grace and the dangers of pride, all taught through the medium of a single fig. The ultimate dessert, the most prized of all, is one you might only taste a few times in your life. It is the portion of honor given out by the kings of Sparta. Sparta famously had 2 kings who held religious, judicial, and military authority. When the kings dined in the mess hall, they were given a double portion of everything. This was not for them to eat themselves. It was a symbol of their office. What they did with this extra portion was a powerful social tool. A king could give his second portion to any man he wished to honor. To be the recipient of the king's EPA, IKLon was the highest public praise a Spartan could receive. It was a signal to everyone present that you had earned the ultimate respect of the state's highest leader. Historians are fascinated by these food-based honor systems. They represent a society where status is not demonstrated by wealth, at least not officially, but by these symbolic acts of giving and receiving. The distribution of food becomes a complex language of respect, hierarchy, and social bonding. Academics still debate how much of this was formal rule versus informal custom. Was the giving of an EPA IKL a spontaneous act of generosity, or was it a highly ritualized, unexpected part of the meal? With everyone knowing who was likely to give and receive, it was probably a mix of both. A system that felt organic, but was underpinned by rigid social structures. For you, these moments are the only sweetness you need. The pride you feel when an elder hands you a choice piece of venison far outweighs any fleeting pleasure you might get from a sugary treat. It's a deeper, more lasting satisfaction. It nourishes your spirit, not just your body. It reinforces your place in the pack, your value to the community. In a society that denies the senses, the hunger for honor becomes the most powerful appetite of all, and the only dessert that can satisfy that hunger is a simple piece of food given and received with respect, under the watchful eyes of your brothers. Your relationship with alcohol is defined by a single, powerful principle: control. The watered-down wine at your daily meals is a testament to this, a constant, liquid reminder of the virtue of moderation. But the Spartan state, never one to leave a lesson to subtlety, doesn't just rely on quiet example. It employs a far more visceral and humiliating method to teach its most important values. You saw it as a boy, and the image is seared into your memory: the spectacle of the drunken helot. This is not a rare occurrence. Periodically, as a form of public education, the helots are used as living, breathing props in a lesson about the evils of intoxication. Helots, the subjugated population of Mesene, Ia and Laconia who are bound to the land they work, are more than just serfs. They are a constant, looming threat, a reminder of a conquered people who vastly outnumber you. Your entire social structure is built upon keeping them suppressed, and one way to do that is through systematic dehumanization. This lesson is a prime example. The EP whores, the powerful elected magistrates of Sparta, would order a group of helots to be brought to a public space, often the very mess hall where you take your meals. There, they are forced to drink large quantities of strong, unmixed wine. Unlike you, who carefully dilutes your drink with water, they are compelled to consume the wine in its most potent form. The purpose is not to celebrate, but to degrade. You watch as the wine takes its effect. The helots, who may have been stoic and resentful just moments before, begin to change. Their posture slackens. Their speech becomes slurred and nonsensical. They lose their coordination, stumbling and lurching. The Spartans in charge, your elders and leaders, then compel them to perform. They are made to sing vulgar or ridiculous songs, their voices loud and off-key. They are forced to execute clumsy, undignified dances, their movements a pathetic parody of grace. The scene is intentionally grotesque. It is designed to be pitiful and contemptible. As a young man, and even now as a full citizen, you are made to observe this. You are made to observe this. You are meant to find it funny in a light-hearted way. You are meant to find it disgusting. This is a practical demonstration, a living tableau of what you must never become. The lesson is simple and brutal. This is what a loss of control looks like. This is what weakness embodied is. This is the behavior of a slave, not a master. This practice is one of the most controversial aspects of Spartan society, and historians have long debated its full implications. On one level, it's a straightforward, if cruel, piece of negative conditioning for Spartan youth. Plutarch, who provides one of the most vivid accounts, presents it exactly this way as a method to instill sobriety. but modern historians often see a deeper, more sinister purpose. It was a calculated act of psychological warfare against the Helot population. By forcing them into this state of public humiliation, the Spartans reinforced the social hierarchy. It was a way of saying you are, by nature, inferior. You lack the self-control and dignity that defines us. This is your true state. There's a little known and even darker layer to this. Some sources suggest that the Helots were not just made to act foolishly, but were forced to recite poetry or speeches that explicitly acknowledge their own subjugated status and the legitimacy of Spartan rule. If true, this transforms the lesson from one about drunkenness into a ritual of political submission, using intoxication to break down their psychological defenses and force them to articulate their own oppression. As you stand there in the mess hall, watching the scene unfold, you feel a complex mix of emotions. There is the intended disgust, a reinforcement of your belief in Spartan discipline. There is perhaps a flicker of pity for the individuals being degraded, though that is a sentiment you would never dare to express. Mostly, there is a hardening of your resolve. You are defined by what you are not. You are not a Helot. You are not a Helot. You are not a slave to your impulses. The spectacle ends. The Helots are dragged away, leaving behind a lingering sense of shame and the sour smell of spilled wine. The mess hall returns to its usual sober order, but the lesson hangs in the air. It serves as a stark reminder of the thin line you walk. The Spartan identity is not a birthright that is guaranteed forever. It is a status that must be constantly performed and defended through discipline. The moment you lose control, the moment you allow yourself to become like the figures you just witnessed, you risk losing everything that makes you a Spartan. The image of the drunken Helot is a ghost that haunts your every cup of wine, ensuring you never forget the virtue of moderation and the price of its absence. The atmosphere in your mess hall, the Syssitia, is a study in contrasts. It's a place of camaraderie, yet it's overwhelmingly serious. It's a communal space, yet it's governed by rigid rules of conduct. Use it upright on your hard wooden bench. There's no idle chatter, no loud laughter, no boisterous storytelling. The tone is sober, measured, and focused. In this culinary desert, where the food itself offers no pleasure, the only real spice permitted at the table is conversation, and even that is rationed and served in a very specific style. The humor, when it does appear, is as dry and tough as your birthplace of what the world will come to know as laconic wit, named after your homeland, Laconia. It's a style of speaking that is brief, blunt, and often infused with a deadpan, understated humor. A long-winded story is seen as a sign of a cluttered mind. The goal is to convey the most meaning with the fewest possible words. You might be in the middle of your meal, dutifully consuming your black broth, when one of the older veterans poses a question to the group, perhaps a tactical problem or a moral dilemma. The discussion that follows is not a rambling debate. Men offer their opinions concisely. A well-placed, sharp observation is valued far more than a lengthy speech. The jokes, when they comment on another's less than heroic performance during a training exercise, not with a loud taunt, but with a single, cutting remark that is both an insult and a form of tough love encouragement. Everyone understands the subtext. It's a humor that relies on a shared, unspoken context. This unique style of communication was a core part of your education. As a boy in the Agoge, you were taught to listen more than you speak. When you were asked a question by an elder, you were expected to give a thoughtful, concise answer. A rambling or foolish response would earn you a punishment sometimes, a bite to the thumb as a sharp, surprising reminder to think before you speak. A classic, perhaps apocryphal, story illustrates this perfectly. When Philip II of Macedon, the father of Alexander the Great, was conquering Greece, he sent a threatening message to Sparta. The message said, "If I enter Laconia, I will raze Sparta to the ground." The Spartan epihors sent back a reply consisting of a single word, "if." This is the essence of laconic, with maximum defiance with minimum verbiage. These are the stories you share in the mess hall, not just as history, but as models of ideal communication. The dinner conversation is also a form of ongoing oral examination. The elders in the mess deliberately bring up matters of state, discuss current events, or critique recent decisions. They then turn to the younger men and ask for their opinions. This is not idle talk. It is a test. They are assessing your judgment, your understanding of Spartan values, and your ability to articulate your thoughts clearly and concisely. A clever, well-reasoned answer earns you a nod of approval, a subtle but significant sign of respect. A foolish or ill-considered remark can damage your reputation among the men you live and fight with. The dinner table is a training ground for the mind, just as the wrestling pitch is for the body. There's a lesser-known aspect to these dinner conversations, the use of music and poetry. It wasn't all grim talk of war and politics. After the meal, the men would sometimes sing. But these were not the raucous drinking songs of an Athenian symposium. They were martial hymns, songs that celebrated the heroic deeds of past Spartans, or poems that extolled the virtues of courage and self-sacrifice. A cit hera type of lyre might be brought out, and men would take turns singing. Even this was a test. To sing well, with the proper gravity and passion, was a respected skill. The songs reinforced the collective ideology, reminding everyone in the room of the ideals they were expected to live and die for. Historians are still piecing together the full picture of life inside a Spartan mess hall. The popular image is one of silent, grim-faced men stoically eating terrible food. The reality was likely more complex. While it was certainly not a place of levity, the shared humor, the intellectual sparring, and the communal singing created a powerful sense of belonging and shared identity. The debate continues on just how free the conversation was. Could a young man genuinely critique an elder's opinion without fear of reprisal? The official line is that open debate was encouraged, but the immense social pressure to conform likely meant that most conversation reinforced, rather than challenged, the status quo. For you, this is the rhythm of your evening. You endure the food, you drink the watered-down wine, and you participate in this unique social ritual. You learn to wield words like a weapon with precision and economy. You learn that a sharp mind and a quick wit are as valuable as a strong arm and a steady spear. In the absence of flavorful food, the conversation itself becomes the main course, the only seasoning you need to make the meal, and your life bearable. As you sit in the mess hall, day after day, year after year, consuming the same monotonous diet, you might begin to wonder who came up with this insane system, who was the architect of this life of institutionalized hardship. The answer, according to every Spartan and most of the ancient world, is a single, almost mythical figure, Lycurgus, the legendary lawgiver. The story of Lycurgus is woven into the very fabric of your society. He is your Moses, your Solon, your founding father. The tales say that centuries ago, Sparta was a chaotic and unruly state, plagued by inequality and strife. Lycurgus, a man of noble birth, traveled the world to Crete, to Ionia, perhaps even to Egypt, studying different forms of government and society. Upon his return, he was inspired by the oracle at Delphi to create a new, radical constitution for Sparta, known as the Great Architecture. This constitution, you are taught, touched every aspect of Spartan life. It established the dual kingship, the Council of Elders Gerousia, and the Assembly. But its most profound impact was on the social order. It was Lycurgus who decreed that all land should be divided equally among the citizens. It was Lycurgus who banned gold and silver coinage, replacing it with cumbersome iron rods to discourage the accumulation of wealth. And, most importantly for your daily life, it was Lycurgus who instituted the Agoge training system and mandated the Syssitia, the communal messes with their famously awful food. His rationale, as the story goes, was to eradicate luxury, envy, and greed, the vices he believed were the root of all social decay. By forcing all men to eat the same simple food at the same table, he created a powerful bond of equality and brotherhood. The black broth, the watered-down wine, the barley cakes, these weren't just random dietary choices, they were carefully selected instruments of his grand social experiment. He designed a system where the only path to distinction was through virtue and martial prowess, not wealth or indulgence. The legend of his death is the final, perfect chapter in his story. After establishing his laws, he made the Spartans swear an oath that they would not change his constitution until he returned from a journey. He then departed again for Delphi. Upon receiving the oracle's approval that his laws were excellent, he starved himself to death, ensuring he would never return. By this ultimate act of self-sacrifice, he locked Sparta into his system forever. It's a powerful and moving story, a constant reminder of the gravity of the laws you live by. But here's the kicker, the part that makes historians endlessly debate: did Lycurgus, the man, actually exist? This is one of the great and resolved questions of ancient history. There is no contemporary evidence for his existence. The first detailed accounts of his life and reforms were written by historians like Herodotus and Plutarch, centuries after he was supposed to have lived. There are no inscriptions, no archaeological evidence directly linked to him. The stories about him are full of contradictions and supernatural elements, like his consultations with the oracle. Because of this, the academic consensus on Lycurgus is that there is no consensus. The debate generally falls into three camps. The first camp believes he was a real historical figure, the single, brilliant reformer who fundamentally reshaped Spartan society, even if his story has been embellished with legend over time. The second camp argues that he was not a single person but a composite figure, a mythical founder to whom a long, gradual process of social and political evolution was later attributed. In this view, the Spartan system wasn't created in a single stroke of genius, but developed over generations, and Lycurgus was just the name given to that process. The third, and perhaps most cynical, camp suggests that he might have been a minor, perhaps forgotten, local deity or hero, who was later elevated and reinvented as a great lawgiver to provide a divine and authoritative origin for Sparta's unique and often harsh customs. Giving your laws the stamp of approval from a legendary founder who spoke with the gods is a very effective way to ensure no one questions them. This scholarly debate adds a fascinating layer to your bowl of black broth. While you believe you are honoring the sacred laws of a real historical founder, you might actually be participating in a tradition whose origins are far murkier and more complex. The system that dictates your every meal may not be the product of a single, radical vision, but the result of a slow, organic, and perhaps accidental historical process. For you, of course, this debate is irrelevant, even blasphemous. Lycurgus is real. His wisdom is self-evident in the strength and discipline of your state. The system works. You look around the mess hall at the hardened faces of your brothers in arms, and you see the living proof of his genius. Your entire world, from the way you are raised to the way you eat, is a monument to him. Whether he was a man or a myth, his shadow looms large over your table, and his spirit is in every last, unappetizing spoonful of broth. As you force down another spoonful of the salty, vinegary broth, the why of it all solidifies in your mind. This isn't just about tradition or honoring a mythical lawgiver. There is a clear, cold, and calculated philosophy behind this brutal diet, a philosophy that is drilled into you from the moment you enter the Agoge. It is the belief that the body and the soul are inextricably linked, and that to forge an unbreakable warrior, you must first starve and discipline the flesh. The core principle is simple: luxury is weakness. Pleasure is a corrosive agent that softens the spirit and dulls the senses. A man who is accustomed to fine food, comfortable beds, and rich clothing will become dependent on them. In the field, on a campaign, he will suffer when these comforts are removed. He will complain. He will complain. He will complain. He will in short be a liability. A man accustomed to hardship, however, thrives in it. The battlefield is not a shock to his system, it's merely a continuation of his daily life. Your diet is the most fundamental expression of this philosophy. By eating bland, unappetizing food every single day, you are engaged in a constant act of self-denial. You are training your willpower, teaching your most basic animal instincts to submit to your rational mind. Every time you eat the black broth without complaint, you are strengthening your mental fortitude. It's a form of daily meditation on the virtue of endurance. This philosophy extends beyond just the food itself. The Spartans believed that a simple, lean diet produced a superior physical specimen. The writer Xenophon, a great admirer of the Spartan system, argued that the intentionally meager rations of the Agoge made the boys grow taller and more handsome. He reasoned that the body, not being weighed down by excessive food, could stretch and grow to its natural, lean potential. Furthermore, he claimed that a simple diet made men more fertile and women more capable of bearing healthy children. Now, from a modern nutritional standpoint, this is highly debatable. Chronic undernourishment, especially in childhood, typically stunts growth rather than promoting it. The Spartan science here was likely more a reflection of their aesthetic and ideological preferences than any objective biological reality. They valued lean, weary physiques over bulky, muscular ones, and they reverse-engineered a nutritional philosophy to justify the diet that produced this look. This is a classic point where historical belief clashes with modern science, and historians are still trying to understand the actual physical effects of the Spartan diet versus the perceived one. The communal aspect of the meal is just as important as the food itself. Eating together in the fight erodes individuality and fosters a powerful sense of the collective. There are no private dinner parties, no opportunities for one man to show off his wealth by hosting a lavish feast. The mess hall is the great equalizer. At the table, you are not an individual with private tastes and preferences. You are one of 15 parts of a single unit. This bond, forged over shared bowls of terrible soup, is the same bond that will hold the phalanx together in the chaos of battle. You learn to trust the man next to you because you have shared the exact same life, the exact same hardships, the exact same food. There is also a deeply practical element to this diet. A man who is not picky about his food is a better soldier. On a campaign, you will not be dining on roasted boar and fresh figs. You will be eating whatever rations can be carried, hard biscuits, dried meat, and maybe some for aged greens if you're lucky. Your entire life has been a preparation for this reality, while an Athenian soldier might grumble about the poor quality of his campaign rations. For you, it's just another Tuesday, in essence pre-acclimatized to the privations of war. A little known but fascinating part of this philosophy concerned the voice. The Spartans believed that a simple diet of food and watered-down wine lead to a healthier, stronger speaking voice. This might seem strange, but in a pre-microphone era, a commander's ability to project his voice across an noisy battlefield was a critical skill. Whether there's any truth to this is unknown, but it shows how deeply they believed that every single aspect of their physical being was shaped by their austere diet. So, the black broth is more than a test. It is the physical manifestation of an entire worldview. It represents the subjugation of individual desire to the collective will, the belief in strength through hardship, and the conviction that the most effective warrior is the one who has mastered himself completely, starting with his own stomach. It's a philosophy served in a bowl, and you consume it daily, absorbing its lessons into the very fiber of your being. As you sit in the rigidly masculine world of the mess hall, you might wonder about the other half of Spartan society. What are your wives, mothers, and sisters eating while you endure the black broth? The answer is simple and, from your perspective, perhaps a little unfair. They are eating better than you. The life of a Spartan woman is as unique and purpose-driven as your own, but her purpose is different. and so is her diet. Her primary duty to the state is not to fight, but to bear strong, healthy children who will become the next generation of warriors, or mothers of warriors, or mothers of warriors. To achieve this, her physical well-being is paramount, and that starts with proper nutrition. Unlike you, Spartan girls are not put through a system of deliberate undernourishments. While you were in the Agoge, learning to survive on scraps and stolen food, your female counterparts were being raised at home, provided with a diet that was plentiful and nutritious. They ate more, and they ate a greater variety of foods. They received ample portions of barley and wheat, cheese, fresh fruit, and likely had more regular access to meat and fish. The state recognized that a well-fed, strong young woman was more likely to produce a healthy, robust infant, the all-important raw material for the Spartan war machine. This distinction is not a sign of female privilege in the modern sense. It is pure pragmatism. You are a disposable asset. Your purpose is to fight and, if necessary, die for Sparta. A woman's body, on the other hand, is the vessel for the future of the state. It is an asset to be nurtured and protected. A famous saying attributed to Gorgo, a Spartan queen, captures this sentiment. When asked by an Athenian woman why Spartan women were the only ones who could rule men, she replied, "Because we are the only ones who give birth to men." Their unique role afforded them a unique status and, consequently, a better diet. In addition to eating more, Spartan girls and women undertook their own form of physical education. They participated in gymnastics, running, wrestling, and even discus and javelin throwing. This was unheard of in the rest of the Greek world, where women were typically sequestered and expected to be demure. The Spartan logic was that a strong, athletic mother would produce a strong, athletic child. This rigorous physical activity required a higher caloric intake, another reason their diet was more substantial than yours. When you go home from your mess hall, as you are allowed to do after a certain age, though you must still take your main meal at the Syssitia, the food you might find there is different. Your wife is not bound by the rule of the black broth. The household kitchen would produce meals that, while still simple by Athenian standards, were more varied and palatable than your official rations. There would be no overt luxury, but there would be a focus on wholesome, nourishing food. This dietary double standard is a source of constant fascination for historians. It's one of the clearest examples of how Spartan society was organized around functional gender roles. Men were forged in hardship to be warriors, women were nurtured to be breeders. There's an ongoing academic discussion about the extent of this dietary gap. Was it a dramatic difference, or just a subtle one? Some scholars argue that while women were certainly better fed than the boys in the Agoge, their diet as adults might have been quite similar to the men's, minus the mandatory black broth. The emphasis was always on simplicity and health, not indulgence, for both sexes. A strange and lesser-known detail relates to wine. While you drink your wine heavily diluted, some sources suggest that Spartan women drank little or no wine at all. The belief was that sober mothers produced healthier, more clear-headed children. This stands in contrast to some other Greek societies where women might have consumed wine more freely in the privacy of their own quarters. If true, it's another example of the Spartan diet being meticulously designed to serve a specific, state-mandated biological function. So while you are bound to the collective, sitting on your hard bench and sharing your grim meal, your wife enjoys a greater degree of dietary freedom and better nutrition. You understand it. It is all part of the system. Her strength is your strength. Her health is the health of your future son, who will one day take your place in the Agoge. Then in the mess hall, eating the same black broth, all in the service of Spartan continuity. Her well-being is an investment in the state, just as your hardship is. It is two sides of the same iron coin. Your world is small and intensely focused. The borders of Laconia are, for the most part, the borders of your reality. But stories and travelers do trickle in, bringing tales of the world beyond your mountainous home. And no place captures the imagination and scorn of a Spartan quite like Athens. Athens, to you, is the antithesis of everything you stand for. It is the city of chatterboxes, philosophers, artists, and, worst of all, Sybarites. While you are in the mess hall, sitting upright and eating your functional slop, you hear stories of how the Athenians dine. The picture painted is one of decadent, almost comical, excess. You hear of the Athenian symposium. It is their version of a drinking party, but it bears no resemblance to your sober, orderly mess. The Athenians, you are told, don't sit on hard benches. They recline on plush couches, propped up on their elbows, a posture you would consider shockingly lazy and vulnerable. The meal is not a single, shared pot of broth, but a succession of courses, each designed to delight the senses. They start with appetizers, olives, sharp cheeses, salted fish, and fresh vegetables. Then comes the main course, a parade of dishes that sound like pure fantasy to you. There is roasted lemon kid, game bird stuffed with herbs, and a stunning variety of seafood, octopus, squid, and fresh fish brought in daily from the port of Piraeus, often grilled and drizzled with a golden stream of olive oil and a squeeze of lemon. Their bread is not your dense, tough barley cake. It is made from fine wheat flour, leavened to be light in dairy, and the wine they drink it mixed, as is proper for Greeks, but the atmosphere surrounding it is entirely different. Their symposia are dedicated to conversation, yes, but also to poetry, music, and games, all fueled by a steady flow of wine that often leads to genuine intoxication, a state you have been conditioned to view with utter contempt. But the most Elean concept of all is their dessert course. After the savory dishes are cleared away, the Athenians bring out the tirage or treats. This is a course dedicated purely to pleasure. There are honey cakes, so sweet they make your teeth ache just to imagine them. There are platters of fresh and dried fruits, grapes, pomegranates, and dates imported from exotic lands. There are nuts and sweetmeats. It's a celebration of sweetness and indulgence that is fundamentally at odds with your entire way of life. When you and your mess mates discuss these stories, it is with a uniform sense of moral superiority. You shake your heads at the foolishness of it all. How can a man who eats like that be expected to fight, one of your comrades might say, wiping the last of the black broth from his bowl with a piece of barley cake. His belly is too full, his mind too soft. This contrast between the Spartan mess and the Athenian symposium is a favorite topic for ancient writers and modern historians alike. It's the classic dichotomy of austerity versus luxury, martialism versus intellectualism, body versus mind, or perhaps body versus palate. Historians debate how much of this is a true representation versus a caricature. Was every Athenian dinner a lavish feast? Of course not. The average Athenian farmer ate a simple diet, not dramatically different from your own staples of barley and olives. The symposium was an activity for the wealthy elite, but it's the ideal that matters. The Athenian elite aspired to luxury and pleasure. The Spartan elite aspired to hardship and discipline. A curious, little-known detail that highlights this difference is the role of the cook. In Athens, a highly skilled cook who could create inventive and delicious dishes was a celebrated artisan, a status symbol for the wealthy man who employed him. There were even celebrity chefs of a sort, who wrote down their recipes and gained fame for their culinary creations. In Sparta, the cook was an anonymous state functionary whose sole job was to prepare the black broth. His name was unimportant, his skill was in consistency, not creativity. The idea of celebrating a cook for making food too delicious would be dangerously close to sedition in your world. You listen to the tales of Athens, and you feel no envy. You feel a hardening of your own identity. Every story of their indulgence reinforces the righteousness of your denial. They are slaves to their appetites, building a society on shifting sands of pleasure and decadence. You are masters of yourselves, building a state on the bedrock of discipline and self-sacrifice. Your bland diet is not a punishment, it is your shield. It is the very thing that makes you superior. Let the Athenians have their honey cakes and their reclining couches. You have your brotherhood, your discipline. In your mind, there is no question as to which diet forges the stronger man. Even in a life as rigidly structured as yours, there are moments that break the monotony. These are the religious festivals, days set aside to honor the gods. In other Greek cities, a festival is an excuse for a feast, a day of public banquets, wine and revelry. In Sparta, a festival is simply an occasion for a slightly less miserable meal. The principles of austerity and moderation are so deeply ingrained that even the gods are celebrated with restraint. One of the most important festivals in your calendar is the Agoge. It's a 3-day festival held in the summer, dedicated to the god Apollo in the memory of the young hero Agoge, who was, according to myth, a lover of Apollo and a local Spartan prince. The festival is a strange mix of mourning and celebration. Then the food served perfectly reflects this duality. The first day is a solemn affair. It is a day of mourning for the death of Agoge. On this day, there are no joyful songs, no wearing of festive garlands. The mood is somber, and the food matches it. You still gather in your mess hall, but the meal is even more austere than usual. The bread served is plain, and there are strict prohibitions against making any offerings of it to the gods, a gesture normally associated with meals. It is a day of ritualized fasting and grief. In essence, you are celebrating by making your already bad food even worse. But the second day is different. The mood shifts from mourning to celebration. This is the day to honor Apollo. Large choirs of boys and young men sing traditional hymns. There are processions, athletic contests, and chariot races. And in the mess halls, the diet is noticeably improved. This is what passes for a feast in Sparta. The black broth is likely still on the menu. It is accompanied by a far more generous spread. A large number of animals, likely goats or sheep, are sacrificed to the god, and the meat is distributed among the citizens. This means you get a substantial portion of roasted meat, a true luxury. The barley cakes might be supplemented with special loaves of bread, perhaps made with wheaten shaped into elaborate forms. The monthly contribution of cheese and figs is supplemented by other seasonal fruits and vegetables. It's not an Athenian-style banquet by any stretch of the imagination, but for you, it is a day of abundance. Another major festival is the Carni, also dedicated to Apollo. This 9-day festival has a distinctly military character, a reflection of its supposed origins in the Dorian migration. During the festival, you live in tent-like structures, 9 men to a tent, mimicking the conditions of a military camp. You eat together in these groups, and the meals are again more plentiful than usual, funded by the state. The details of the menu are scarce, but it was likely similar to the Agoge feast: more meat, better bread, and a general sense of communal celebration, all within the familiar framework of a military-style mess. A fascinating and little-known aspect of these festival feasts is the concept of the KOP, this was a specific type of banquet separate from the daily mess, often associated with these religious celebrations. That a KOP is invited guests would recline, a rare exception to the no-reclining rule, and be served a specific meal: barley bread, wheat bread, meat, raw vegetables, and a special, fresh broth that was pointedly not the black broth, a clear step up from the daily norm, but still incredibly simple and portion-controlled compared to the lavish, multi-course banquets of other cities. Even on these special occasions, the core Spartan values are never far from the surface. The portions are distributed equally. The consumption of wine is still carefully controlled. The focus is on the communal and religious aspects of the meal, not on individual indulgence. Historians often debate the true feel of these events. Were they genuinely joyful and relaxed, Or were they just a slightly more festive version of the usual Spartan discipline? The truth is likely somewhere in the middle. These festivals provide a welcome, if temporary, relief from the daily grind. They are a reminder that life is not only hardship, even if the celebration of joy is just as structured and regulated as everything else. As the festival ends and you return to your normal routine, the memory of the roasted meat and better bread lingers for a day or two, but it quickly fades as the familiar taste of black broth reasserts itself. The feast was an exception, a brief punctuation mark in a long sentence of austerity. It serves its purpose to honor the gods and reinforce social bonds, but also to make you appreciate the return to normalcy. After all, too much feasting, even in the name of the gods, might make a man soft, and that is a risk the Spartan state is never willing to take. The horn sounds in the pre-dawn mist. A runner has arrived from the border, his message urgent. Tensions with a neighboring city-state, perhaps Argos or a resurgent Messeniae, have finally boiled over. The EP whores have met, the assembly has been summoned, and the decision is made. Sparta is going to war. The news spreads through the city not with panic, but with a grim, quiet sense of purpose. This is what you have been training for your entire life. Every grueling day in the Agoge, every bowl of black broth, every lash of the whip for a clumsy mistake, it has all led to this moment. You are not an individual anymore. You are a cog in the great red and bronze machine of the Spartan army. You go about your preparations with practiced efficiency. You retrieve your gear from your home. The heavy bronze helmet with its intimidating horsehair crest, the concave bronze shield, the asp is polished to a mirror shine, your most important possession. The greaves to protect your shins, the breastplate, and your primary weapon, the long spear. The dory used on your iconic crimson cloak. The foe in IK is a color chosen, they say, because it doesn't show the color of blood yours or the enemy's. Your family watches. Your mother, who sent you off to the Agoge at 7, hands you your shield with the legendary command, return with it, or on it. Come back a victor, carrying your shield, or come back a corpse carried upon it. There is no third option. Your wife says her goodbyes with a stoicism that matches your own. There are no tears. Weakness is not permitted, even in parting. Your final stop before you march out is the mess hall. You gather with your 15 brothers, the men of your Syssitia. This is your last meal before you face the real possibility of death. In another culture, this might be an occasion for a special feast, a final taste of the good things in life. But you are Spartan. You take your seat on the hard bench. A helot servant brings you your meal. It is a bowl of black broth, a hard barley cake, a cup of watered-down wine. It is the exact same meal you had yesterday, and the same one you will have tomorrow if you are still alive. This is not an oversight. It is a deliberate, powerful statement. Your life on the eve of battle is no different from your life in times of peace. The discipline does not bend. War is not a special occasion. It is the ultimate expression of your normal existence. By eating the same bland, functional food, you are reinforcing your mental armor. You are reminding yourself that you are not dependent on comfort or luxury. You are a creature of discipline, and that discipline is your greatest strength. The mood in the mess hall is not somber or fearful. It is calm, focused, and professional. The conversation is minimal. You might share a laconic joke with the man next to you, the one whose life will depend on your shield, just as yours depends on his. You eat your meal, not savoring it, but consuming it for the fuel it provides. This is your pre-game meal, and the game is war. There's a historical debate about the exact rituals performed before a march. Some sources mention that one of the kings would sacrifice a goat to the goddess Artemis and observe the omens. A favorable omen would give the army confidence, but the personal preparation, the final meal, seems to have been stubbornly mundane. The steadfast refusal to alter the routine is a form of psychological preparation that historians find fascinating. It's a way of domesticating war, of stripping it of its terror, by treating it That's just another part of the job. A little known detail of your pre-battle preparation is what you do after the meal. You and your comrades would comb and dress your long hair. To an outsider, like the Persian scouts who famously observed the Spartans doing this before the Battle of Thermopylae, it looked like an act of vanity, a bizarre moment of personal grooming before a fight to the death. But for you, it is a ritual. It is a way of preparing yourself, of making yourself beautiful for what could be your final act. It is a sign that you are calm, unafraid, and ready to meet your fate with dignity. You finish your broth. You drain your cup of wine. You rise from the bench with the other men of your mess. You look at their faces, hardened, impassive. These are the men you will stand with. You have shared countless hardships. Now you will share the ultimate test. No emotional farewells. You simply gather your shield and spear, fall into formation, and march out of the city, the taste of black broth still lingering on your tongue, the taste of home, of discipline, of Sparta itself. The march is grueling. The sun beats down on your bronze helmet and the weight of your shield. The asp digs into your shoulder. You carry close to 70 pounds of gear, and you move with a steady, relentless pace that chews up the miles and demoralizes your enemies before you even arrive. Your hardened, bare feet are calloused and tough from years of training, but the long trek across the rocky terrain of the Peloponnese is still a test of endurance. In these moments, food is not about community or discipline, it's about pure, unadulterated energy. Your campaign rations are the epitome of military practicality. You are not followed by a baggage train laden with fresh supplies and cooks. Each man is responsible for carrying his own provisions, at least for the first several days. Your food needs to be lightweight, calorie-dense, and resistant to spoilage. The cornerstone of your battlefield diet is a harder, drier version of your familiar barley cake. It's essentially a biscuit, baked until almost all the moisture is gone. It's tough enough to break a tooth if you're not careful, and utterly devoid of flavor. But it's packed with carbohydrates and it won't go moldy in your sack. You gnaw on a piece during a brief halt, chewing it slowly and methodically, washing it down with water from your flask. This is not a meal, it's a refueling stop. Alongside the hardtack, you carry a small pouch of dried meat. This isn't the roasted boar of a festival feast. It's strips of salted and sun-dried pork or goat, turning it into a tough, chewy jerky. The salt preserves it and also helps replenish what you lose through sweat. The protein is essential for maintaining muscle strength on the march. The taste is intensely salty, the texture like leather, but it's a welcome and savory change from the endless barley. Cheese is another essential. A hard, dry wheel of goat's cheese is a soldier's best friend. It's an excellent source of fat and protein. It travels well, and a small piece can provide a significant energy boost. You might shave off a few slivers with your knife and eat them with a piece of your hard biscuit. And that's essentially it. Barley biscuits, dried meat, and hard cheese. This is the fuel for the Spartan war machine. It's a diet that would make a modern nutritionist nod in approval for its efficiency, if not for its taste or variety. It's the ancient equivalent of an energy bar. A lesser known, and somewhat debated, component of your field rations is a pouch of raw barley or wheat flour. The idea was that if you were on a long campaign and ran out of your prepared biscuits, you could mix the flour with water to create a simple paste or gruel. It would be unappetizing but life-sustaining. Some historians also suggest that you might carry a small hand mill or quern shared among a few men to grind down grain, that you forge a term that still means steal or pillage from enemy territory. Your childhood training in the Agoge, learning to live off the land, now reveals its ultimate military purpose. This reliance on foraging is a key part of Spartan strategy. An army travels on its stomach, and by being able to live off the enemy's land, you are less dependent on vulnerable supply lines. Once your initial rations run out, raiding farms and granaries, stripping the countryside of resources, it's a brutal but effective way to sustain your army while simultaneously weakening the enemy's ability to support theirs. The question of water is critical. You carry a skin or clay flask, but it's never enough. Finding clean water sources is a constant concern. Your officers are skilled at reading the terrain to find springs or streams. And of course there is wine. You carry a small amount of it, and just like at home, you mix it with the local water. The alcohol not only provides extra calories, but also helps to disinfect questionable water sources, making it safer to drink, a crucial advantage that can keep an army healthy while disease ravages the enemy camp. As you sit by the campfire at night, sharing your meager rations with the men of your mess, the bond of the Syssitia is stronger than ever. The food is even worse than what you get at home, but the principle is the same. You eat together, you suffer together. The gnawing hunger, the tasteless food, it all strips away the non-essential and leaves only the core of your unit. Here in the field, you are not just a dining club, you are a pack of wolves, lean, hungry, and ready for the hunt. The bland taste of your rations is the taste of impending battle. You return from the war victorious. You march back into Sparta, not to a grand parade, but to a quiet, respectful reception. You have done your duty. You clean your armor, store your weapons, and rejoin your family. You return to your seat in the mess hall, and the rhythm of your life resumes. The black broth tastes exactly as it did before you left. For a time, the system holds. The laws of Lycurgus are immutable, the discipline unshakable, but nothing lasts forever. The world outside of Sparta is changing, and even your closed, rigid society cannot remain immune to its influence. The cracks begin to appear, not on the battlefield, but at the edges of your social and economic system. And these cracks, almost invisible at first, start to undermine the very foundation of your life, the austere, egalitarian diet. The turning point is the end of the Peloponnesian War in 400 for BC. Sparta emerges as the undisputed master of Greece. With victory comes empire, and with empire comes wealth. Suddenly, vast amounts of gold and silver, tribute from the defeated city-states, begin to flow into Sparta. This is the very thing Lycurgus tried to prevent with his clumsy iron money. The new wealth is intoxicating, and it begins to corrupt the elite. Men who serve abroad as governors or commanders get a taste for luxury. They see how the Persians and the wealthy Athenians live. They bring back not just gold, but new ideas and new appetites. The old rules against personal wealth begin to erode. While officially forbidden, men find ways to accumulate fortunes. They buy up land, creating vast estates far larger than the original, equal plots assigned by the state. This growing inequality strikes at the heart of the Syssitia, the mess hall. Why every man contributes an equal share from his equal plot of land. But what happens when some men have huge, productive estates while others struggle to make their monthly quota from their small, ancestral plot? The system begins to break down. You see it happening subtly at first. A wealthy member of your mess might generously donate a whole roasted pig for the evening meal, far beyond the normal expectation of sharing game from a hunt. It's a gesture that earns him honor, but it also highlights his superior wealth and disrupts the carefully cultivated illusion of equality. Other men, unable to compete, feel a sense of resentment. The simple camaraderie of the mess is tainted by economic anxiety and social competition. Then men begin to fail to make their monthly contributions. As land becomes concentrated in fewer hands, more and more citizens are left with plots that are too small or too overworked to produce the required amount of barley, wine, and cheese. The penalty for this is catastrophic. They lose their citizenship. They are demoted to the status of hypo-mewans or inferiors. They are stripped of their rights and cast out of the mess halls. The number of full Spartan citizens, the homo I, begins to dwindle at an alarming rate. The mess halls, once full, start to have empty seats. This is a point of intense study for historians, the collapse of the Spartan citizen body, a process known as OLIG, anthropy the strict, unforgiving nature of the mess hall contribution system, designed to ensure equality, ironically became a primary engine of inequality and demographic collapse. It was a system too rigid to adapt to changing economic realities. A little known but powerful symbol of this decline was the changing role of the helots. As Spartan citizens became wealthier and more interested in politics and luxury, they became increasingly absentee landlords. The management of their estates, and thus the production of the food for the mess halls, fell almost entirely to their helot overseers. The very food that defined your Spartan identity was now being produced by the people you oppressed, with less and less oversight from you. The diet itself begins to change, at least for the rich. While the black broth might still be consumed publicly in the mess halls as a nod to tradition, in the privacy of their own homes, the wealthy elite are eating differently. They import fine wines from across the Greek world. Their cooks, perhaps hired from Athens, learn to prepare more elaborate dishes. The old austerity becomes a public performance rather than a genuine way of life. You, a traditionalist, watch this with a sense of dread. You see the foundations of your world crumbling. The discipline is fading. The equality is a lie. The shared hardship that once bound you all together is being replaced by private indulgence and public hypocrisy. The system that made Sparta strong is rotting from within, poisoned by the very success it achieved. The cracks are no longer at the edges, they are running right through the center of your dining table. The years wear on. Your hair is now more gray than black. The lines on your face are carved deep, not just by the sun and the hardships of war, but by a sense of loss. The Sparta you grew up in, the Sparta of iron discipline and absolute equality, is a ghost. The mess hall, your Phi Eta, feels different now. The benches that were once full are sparsely populated. The faces are younger. The old veterans who remembered the glory days are mostly gone. The conversation lacks the old, replaced by talk of money and land disputes. The system is broken. The number of full citizens, the homo ioi, has collapsed. So many have lost their land and their place at the table that the army is a shadow of its former self. Sparta, the unbeatable military power, suffers humiliating defeats. The city is no longer the master of Greece. It is a second-rate power, a living relic. But still, you come to the mess hall. It is your duty. It is all you have ever known. The helot servant, perhaps the grandson of the man who served you your first bowl of broth, places the familiar clay bowl in front of you. It's the black broth. Some things, it seems, are too stubborn to die. You lift the spoon to your lips and take a sip. The taste is the same as it has always been, salty, sour, with that metallic tang of blood. But today, it tastes different. It no longer tastes like strength, discipline, and brotherhood. It tastes like failure. It tastes like an idea that has outlived its time. This broth, this symbol of your uniqueness, has become a symbol of your downfall. The rigid system it represented, the refusal to bend, the belief that hardship alone was the measure of a man, it was this very inflexibility that led to your ruin. The mess hall, designed to create a band of equal brothers, became an exclusive club that cast out its own members for the crime of poverty. The diet that was supposed to forge an army of supermen created a society so brittle it shattered under the weight of its own success. You look at the murky liquid in your bowl. This concoction of pig's blood and vinegar was once a source of pride, the secret to why you didn't fear death. Now it seems like a punchline to a very long, very cruel joke. The world changed, but the recipe for the black broth did not. And so, Sparta was left behind. Historians will forever debate the what-ifs. What if Sparta had adapted? What if the laws of Lycurgus, man or myth, had been allowed to evolve? Could the dietary and social system have been reformed to prevent the collapse of the citizen body? Or was the system's self-destructive nature encoded in its DNA from the very beginning? It's a question that has no answer. A classic case of a historical society that was a victim of its own rigid principles. You are not thinking about grand historical theories. you are just an old man eating his soup. But in this last bowl, you can taste your entire life. You taste the fear and hunger of the Agoge, the thrill of a successful night raid for a piece of cheese. You taste the pride of your first meal as a full citizen, the camaraderie of the campaign trail, the grim determination before battle. And now, you taste the bitterness of decline, the ashes of a dream. The black broth was meant to be the fuel for a perpetual motion machine of Spartan dominance. Instead, it was the poison that slowly, inexorably, killed it from the inside. It created warriors so perfectly honed for one specific environment that they could not survive in any other. It was a diet for a world that no longer existed. You set down your spoon. You have finished your last bowl. The taste lingers, a final, faint reminder of everything that was, and everything that was lost. The sun sets over the peaks of Mount Agoge, casting long shadows into the mess hall. The evening is quiet.